I'd peak number 2 globally in Rocket League, have 5 years of SSL experience, 12 SSL tags, and have spent the last 2 years coaching at the highest level. And I've worked with countless players, and I see the same mistakes over and over and over again. If you watch this video until the end, you'll learn my personal breakdown of how Rocket League works and how you can completely change your rank just by following this breakdown. The first thing you need to do is figure out your starting point. Every player I've ever coached wants to rank up, but they don't want to take the time to understand what they're actually doing wrong. If you don't know what mistakes you're making, you'll keep repeating them without actually realizing it. The biggest reasons players plateau or don't rank up isn't a lack of mechanics or speed. It's because they keep making the exact same mistakes over and over and over again. And a lot of players just automatically think they need to get better at mechanics, hit the ball harder, or play faster. But that's not the problem. The real reason most players can't or don't rank up is because they don't recognize the habits that are keeping them held back. They play thousands of games thinking something will just click, but they never take time to reflect on what's actually happening in the game. For the longest time, I didn't realize how much of my improvement came from watching my own replays. I was making the exact same positioning mistakes over and over and over again, and no amount of grinding was going to actually fix that. Once I started analyzing my own games, I was able to see where I was throwing possession, when I was cutting rotation, and where I was hesitating. And once I recognized those patterns, fixing them became super easy. And if you're stuck at the exact same rank month after month after month, it's not because of your mechanics. It's because you aren't seeing your own mistakes. The first step to ranking up is understanding what you're doing wrong. And one of the best ways to do that is by reviewing your own replays. If you just keep getting ranked without ever realizing what went wrong in all of your games, you're not actually improving. You're just staying exactly where you are for month after month after month. Real quick, my team of SSL level coaches is looking for 30 dedicated Rocket League players to rank up in the next 30 days. And the best part is you don't have to grind for hours with no direction. And my team will give you a proven system to improve efficiently. And if you don't see real progress in your mechanics or your rank, we'll do 2 things. 1, we will give you all of your money back, no questions asked. And 2, we'll keep working with you until you reach these goals. And we do this because I want every player I work with to have an amazing experience and because we're confident that we can deliver on our results. If that sounds fair, DM me on Discord with the word coach to get started today. Let's get back to the video. The really good thing about replays is they show you what's actually happening. You might think your teammates are always out of position, but when you go back and watch, you'll see that you're actually the one rotating incorrectly. You also might think you're losing because your shots aren't good enough. But when you analyze your games, you'll realize that you're rushing every single play instead of taking controlled shots. And these are the things you won't notice in the moment. But when you watch your games back, they become super obvious. Now, the really good news is that most players will never do this. They will never go to these lengths, which makes it super easy to pass the 99%. They'll just keep playing and blaming everyone except them for their own mistakes, and they'll never improve. But the players who actually take time to analyze their games will improve significantly quicker than the players who just cope. Watching your own replays is not optional if you actually want to get to the next level. It's the most important tool for improving. If you don't take time to review your mistakes, you'll stay stuck, no matter how many hours you're playing. Once you understand the importance of analyzing your mistakes, the next step is breaking them down in a way that leads to improvement. Most players think that they're analyzing a game when they rewatch a game after a match. But just watching a replay is not enough. You need to be intentional about what you're looking for and how to apply what you learn. The first thing you need to focus on is decision making. A lot of players make bad decisions without even realizing it. This is because they only look at the outcome of the play instead of the actions that led to the outcome. For example, if you get scored on, most players will assume it's because of a missed save. But if you watch the entire play, you'll realize the real mistake happened 10 seconds earlier. Maybe you wasted all of your boost going for a pointless challenge. Or maybe you cut rotation and forced your teammate into a bad position. Every mistake in Rocket League has a chain reaction. And your job when reviewing your gameplay is to find the first mistake in that chain. Instead of just saying, I missed the save, you should be asking, why was I forced into that situation in the first place? When you start thinking like this, this, you'll realize that most of your problems came from decisions that happened long before the breaking point. The second thing you need to focus on is positioning. A lot of players think they're rotating properly because they're following basic concepts, like go back post, but they're still constantly out of position. And this happens because they're not actually adapting to the game, they're just going through the motions. Rotation isn't just a generalized thing. It's about reading the play and positioning where you're needed. When you watch your replay, pay attention to how often you're actually in a good spot to make a play. If you're always going back for boost, cutting your teammates off, or just sitting too far back, you can't be effective, and this is where the real problem is. And a lot of players think pros just play faster than everyone else, but in reality, they're more efficient. Reality is, they just move more effectively than you do. Every position they take serves a purpose. And if you're constantly rotating without thinking, you are wasting movement and putting yourself out of the play. The third thing to focus on is possession. The way you control the ball determines everything about how you control the game. If you're constantly throwing the ball away, you're giving your opponents free possessions. And if you're panicking under pressure, you're making it easier for them to read your play. When you watch your replay, pay attention to how often you're actually keeping possession versus giving it away. A lot of players at the lower ranks think that as long as they hit the ball hard, they're making a good play. But if you look at the higher level players, they don't just hit the ball, they control it. Instead of booming it away, they take an extra second to set up a better touch. And instead of panicking under pressure, they keep the ball close. And then they force the opponent to overcommit. Watching your replays will show you how many times you're giving the ball away when you didn't need to. And once you fix that, everything else becomes easier. And the last thing to look at in your replays is boost management. A lot of players struggle because they're constantly out of boost and putting themselves in bad positions. When you analyze your gameplay, ask yourself how often you were low on boost and whether it was because of bad boost usage or bad boost pathing. And if you're always starved, it's probably not because of bad luck. It's because you're wasting too much boost on unnecessary movements. Every single thing about your game comes down to these four things: decision making, positioning, possession, and boost management. When you review your gameplay, don't just watch the replay. Break it down and find the patterns in your mistakes. The more intentional you are about fixing these habits, the faster you'll improve. Once you've broken down your gameplay and identified your mistakes, actually apply what you've learned. Most players stop at the analysis phase. They see their mistakes, they understand what went wrong, but when they get back into a game, they keep making the same bad decisions. That's because a mistake isn't the same thing as fixing it. If you want real improvement, you need to take 4 deliberate steps to change the way you play. The first step is focusing on one thing at a time. A lot of players try to fix everything at once, but that's not how improvement works. If you try to think about decision making, improving, positioning, possession, boost management all at the exact same time, you're just going to overwhelm yourself and play worse than you were initially. Instead, pick one thing to work on per session. If your biggest issue is throwing the ball away, focus only on possession. If your rotations are sloppy, focus on positioning. When you narrow your focus down to 1 or 2 things, it becomes way easier to build new habits and to get rid of the old bad ones. The second thing you need to do is actively remind yourself during games. It's not enough to just review mistakes after the fact. You need to keep focus on them while you're playing. Before every match, set clear information on what you're working on. If it's boost management, tell yourself before kickoff that you're going to prioritize small pads and avoid wasting boost. If it's decision making, remind yourself to slow down and think before every challenge. The more you reinforce each habit, the more it will stick. The third step is tracking your progress. A lot of players don't know if they're improving because they don't track anything. If you're trying to fix a problem like cutting rotation, take note of how often you do it in each session. If you're working on possession, track how many times you give the ball away unnecessarily. The key here is making your improvement measurable. If you don't track what's changing, you'll never know if what you're doing is actually working. And the last thing you need to do is be patient. A lot of players expect and want instant results. But real improvement takes time. If you've been playing the exact same way for years, you're not going to unlearn bad habits overnight. You might even feel like you're playing worse at times because you're thinking more instead of relying on instinct. But that's just part of the process. Anytime you make a big change, there's going to be a temporary adjustment period before it starts feeling natural. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.